first step is to, let me lower this thing here down. The first step is to get a sense for what your end feel feels like, and almost guesstimate what you think the range of motion is going to be. So for cervical flexion, go ahead and go all the way into chin towards chest. Good. Apply your overpressure to get a sense for his end feel. Good. Okay, and then go ahead and return back to normal. Okay. And for the cervical spine, I want you to test the overpressure, but what we're going to be measuring is just his active range of motion, because it's just more functional for the cervical spine to measure active range.
As much as possible?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you just wanted me to like
Nope,
like
so bend
just-
as much as
so do the
possible.
full- okay, got
Yep,
it.
yep. Okay, so for this measurement, the fulcrum of the goniometer is going to go right over his external meatus of the ear. The proximal arm is going to be lined up perpendicular to the floor. And as he moves through that range, the distal arm is going to be lined up with his nares, okay? So with the base of the nose. So for the start position, we start at 90 degrees of in the goniometer. So as he flexes, we're going to get a measurement that goes obviously beyond 90. So you're going to take the difference between the two to find what degree of measurement that is. So go ahead and flex. Now, so what happens with him is his ear translates forward. So,
Just to do as much.
yeah, so yeah, go as much as you can, and you do want to instruct them to keep their ears steady, so you don't want them falling
So
forward.
don't like don't.
Yeah. So keep your ear where it is. Yep, good. And then I'm bringing that distal arm, keeping it in line with the base of his nares. So we get a measurement of 145. So 145 minus 90 would be 55 degrees. So he has 55 degrees of cervical flexion range of motion. Okay, conversely, you're going to use the same landmarks for extension, so still external meatus, starting with the base of the nares. Go ahead and look up to the ceiling as much as you can. Good. Okay, and again, I'm keeping that distal arm at the base of the nares. This arm is perpendicular to the floor. Okay, now we measure at 38 degrees. So we would take 90 minus 38. Go ahead and go back up. So that would be 52.
Yeah.
52 degrees. Okay. Okay. So flexion extension. Any questions on those? Okay. So let's do lateral. I was hoping this would work, but. Okay. So we're gonna do lateral side bending next. So for this, actually, I'm gonna have you flip around so that they can see the back. Okay. So the fulcrum for this one is going to be lined up with the C7 spinous process. So to find C7, it's the most prominent spinous process at the base of the neck. Okay, so our fulcrum goes there. Your stabilizing arm or proximal arm is going to be aligned with, it's actually perpendicular to the floor. So if there is a scoliosis, you're not going to be lining it up with the spinous processes of the thoracic spine because they're not going to be perpendicular to the floor. So this arm needs to be perpendicular to the floor. And then the distal arm is just going to be lined up along the midline of the occiput. So there isn't really a specific bony landmark for this one, just the midline of the occiput. And then go ahead and side bend to the right. Okay, you follow it, making sure to keep the fulcrum at C7. And then come on back up. So for him, he measured at 40 degrees. Okay, and then go ahead and side bend left. Okay, and for this one, he got 45. So he has a little bit more range of motion going left versus right. Was that consistent with what you found in your screen?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
My right side was right.
Yeah, okay, yep. All right, so there's lateral side bending, and then go ahead and flip to the front one more time. We'll do rotation too. So we'll just do all the cervical spine together. So for rotation, you're gonna need to get above your patient. So I'm gonna actually lower the table a little bit more. If you can't lower the table like we have here, have the patient sit in the chair, because that's gonna be obviously lower than your plinth. Okay, so for the alignment of this one, you're gonna go right in the middle of the head, and then your stabilizing arm is going to be aligned with the nose. So I'm gonna kind of get up here.
You mean to switch forward?
No, you're good. Okay, so it's gonna be lined up with the nose. Okay, and then go ahead and then the I'm sorry, the stabilizing arm for this one, I'm sorry, is going to be in an imaginary line between the two acromions. Imaginary line between the two acromions is your stabilizing arm. And then this one goes through the midline of the nose. Okay, so now go ahead and rotate to the right. Good. Alright, so I'm keeping it in line with his nose. We started at 90 and we get to 23 degrees. So if you take the difference of those two, you get 67. I'm really testing my math here this morning.
You've done a lot of math today.
Alright, and then to the opposite direction, again, this line is in line with an imaginary line between the two acromions, and you follow the nose. Okay, good. Alright, so he gets to 12 degrees there, so then that would be 88. No, 78. 78. So then he'd be 78 degrees to the left. Yes, and that was consistent with your screen too. Yeah, so you can see it, your eyes can gather a lot of information with your screen, but this gives you the objective measure of getting degrees of range of motion, which is certainly important for getting a baseline for your patient to see where they're starting at their initial eval. And then as you're working on your treatments, you can reassess these numbers and see, are they actually improving? It's also good for insurance companies, right? Because insurance companies need to see objective changes in measurements. And so that can be a big part of reimbursement too, is showing these objective measures.